And welcome back. I'm going to start this segment with something that would be downright alarming if it was a president named anyone but Donald Trump. The majority of Americans, I'm going to repeat that, the majority of Americans in a recent poll say the president of the United States is racist. And that's not a position that just came out of left field. In just the past month or so, Trump has rallied to keep statues of Confederate soldiers and leaders from coming down. He also wants bases named after the rebels to keep those names. And just as a historical reminder, those are the same people who broke away from the United States and fought against U.S. soldiers to preserve slavery. He's even threatened to veto a defense bill if it removes the names of Confederate generals from military bases, even though it should be added that current military leadership in many cases supports such a move. Trump also uses racially charged language as a campaign strategy, calling African-American protesters thugs, referencing to Latino immigrants as bad hombres. Trump even demanding an apology from Bubba Watson, he, the only African-American NASCAR driver, because a noose was found on the garage door he was using for a race by NASCAR. Watson didn't even report the noose, and I think by almost any standards handled the nightmare with class every step of the way. But that didn't stop the president from sending a nasty tweet saying it was all a hoax, and the tweet also demanding an apology and going after NASCAR for banning Confederate flags from their races. Wallace replied, saying the president's words were hate. Then there's this.
It's a disease, without question, has more names than any disease in history. I can name Kung Flu. It's got all different names. Wuhan. Wuhan was catching on. Coronavirus, right? Kung Flu, yeah. Kung Flu.
Twice for good measure. Those comments obviously widely denounced as racist. But what is stunning about all of this isn't that this guy said it. By after 3.5 years, who among us can be shocked? It has been the silence from fellow Republicans, even lawmakers in races where they're fighting for their political lives, including in that list all the senators on your screen, including Tom Tillis in North Carolina. He's trailing by double digits. Cory Gardner, the same thing in Colorado. Martha McSally trailing by 7 in Arizona. Susan Collins of Maine trailing by 4. You get the picture. My next guest, he just penned a piece calling out those Republicans, quote, for cowardice and complicity. Let's bring in the writer, op-ed columnist for the Washington Post, Dana Milbank. And Dana, you asked the question that I've been waiting, even though I didn't get the answer necessarily. If it's strictly transactional politics at this point, why would anybody, seeing how the president is polling in their state and dragging them down underwater, why would a Gardner, for that matter, or a Tillis, or any of these guys who've got nothing to lose, not step away from a policy I assume they don't agree with the things that the president's been saying? Why continue to ride with this president when he's basically writing their political epitaph?
Well, look, Richard, I'd like to give them the benefit of the doubt. Hope they don't agree with this, but the longer you go and the rhetoric gets worse and worse and they don't say anything, I mean, it does become a fair question. There are some like Susan Collins who do occasionally speak up. Generally, they don't. Now, one of them is still facing a primary, so you can see why they would want to stick by Trump and appeal to the base. But most of them appear to be taking the same kind of risk or strategy that Trump is, and that is just do everything you can to turn out that conservative base. The thing is, the Republican Party has been, under Trump, it's become primarily, many studies have shown this, motivated by a sense of racial grievance, a sense that white people are losing power in America. The question is, how many people are there like that, and are they enough to win the presidency, and are they enough to get these dozen or so vulnerable Republican senators through in their election? I think certainly conventional wisdom would say there are not enough of these people now that the rest of the country are awakened. You see white women turning away from the Republican Party because of Trump, and you see the Democratic base unusually riled up, not white and non-white voters alike.
And you look in suburbia, not only are they breaking from Trump in every polling, but a lot of vulnerable representatives, Republican representatives, are really worried in the fall. But I'm hearing reports, you probably as well, that Mitch McConnell's telling his guys, listen, come Labor Day, if he's going down this road, everybody's got free rein here to break from him and go their own paths between then and November. Mitch McConnell's wife, I should also mention, she's of Asian heritage, and there's real numbers that there has been a huge spike in hate crimes against Asian Americans right now. Is there no line? Is there no part to say no more? I mean, even Lindsey Graham gave a tepid pushback here. But for some of these, this is personal, one would think.
You know, I brought this to Mitch McConnell's campaign when I wrote this piece, and they said, look, he abhors racism, but he is not the deputy White House press secretary. So that's saying not his job to contradict or correct Trump. And that tells you the Republican leader, the majority leader of the United States Senate, is not going to say, that's unacceptable, Mr. President. We can't have you talking that way. It says a lot. I don't see how you can turn around after Labor Day and do anything that erases what's being done right now.
Now, I get your point about the play to the base, but just use the Confederate flag. NASCAR, and in Mississippi, with an overwhelming Republican majority in the state legislature and a Republican governor, signed to ban it as part of their flag. I don't get, again, transactional, take morality out of this, how he thinks this is a winning argument when every poll says in these battleground states he's going the wrong way. And this is, I get the grievance thing, that's been the MO, but it's the wrong issue if he's trying to win.
Yeah, that's the biggest question. We hear it over and over again. I think the clearest answer in the case of the president is he doesn't really have another option at this point. Even if he were able to appeal to the middle to try to be a leader who brings a cohesive whole to the country, it's very implausible. Nobody would see him that way. And it also just seems that he's not able to do such a thing instinctively. So I think it's less of a strategy right now than an instinct the president is pursuing. And, you know, the real question is, are there enough people who are essentially motivated by what is at core a white power argument? Not only non-whites are appalled by that, but a large number of white people are, of course, appalled by that.
You know, I spoke to Chrissy Todd Whitman, the former Republican governor of New Jersey, who was stronger than I even thought. She called her former colleagues complicit, and she says, listen, it's not just a few of these groups like the Lincoln Project who are out there. They speak for a lot of Republicans who are appalled and said, not again. I don't know what that translates into a number. I'll play a little clip here from the Lincoln Project, who spent a lot of money and also got a lot of free advertising, if you will, as people play these spots.
On Sunday, June 28th, 2020, the Mississippi State Legislature voted to take down the Confederate battle flag, a day many thought would never come. But Donald Trump had a different vision of America. That was the message the President of the United States shared with millions. On a day when the heart of the Confederacy finally lowered its flag, Donald Trump was still fighting the Civil War.
You know, they're good spots, Dana, and I know we've seen Mitt Romney, Lisa Murkowski, albeit for some different issues. I know they're not running for re-election, but they put their necks out there a little bit. Do you get the sense that if people see in September that this thing's going from bad to worse, that we'll see a break then? Or do you say don't hold your breath?
I don't see how much worse it could get. Of course, every time you say that, it gets worse tomorrow. But what have they not seen that they would need to see to say, okay, this is morally unacceptable to me? I mean, the answer generally is they're frightened. They don't want to incur the president's wrath, whether that's social desirability among their friends and associates, or whether they fear re-election. If the president goes after them, they lose the support of their base pretty much instantly. We've seen that over and over again. You know, the real question here is at some point, does something become more important than your political standing, and do you have does your conscience demand that you speak up? And as you say, we have seen it in rare cases, like with Mitt Romney, like with Lisa Murkowski, but it has certainly not been the rule.
Finally, were you surprised when you started this piece, when you reached out to the 11 senators, the radio silence you got, or did you expect it?
I expected complete silence. I expected to go 0 for 11. So I guess I was pleasantly surprised that some of them at least decided to engage on the issue and say, I'm not a racist. But not a one of the 11 sat there and condemned what President Trump has been doing. The most they could say is, I am this person. They would not condemn what the president's done.
A depressing but an interesting story nonetheless. Dana, I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, when we come back, we got some more news about COVID. It's not good. The virus continuing to spread in huge chunks of the country. We're going to show you the spots getting hit the hardest and also tell you about how one of the biggest states still isn't requiring masks even after it tells school kids to report to classrooms next month.